A witness captured the shooting on a cell phone, and videos from cameras on a nearby Tesla show the crime as it happened. A man and a woman are arguing. The man is seen walking toward the woman, follows her around a vehicle. A few moments later, investigators say she shot him. A relative sent us this picture of Bart Diguglielmo. He died from his injuries. It happened yesterday in the middle of the day in the Walmart Supercenter parking lot on McNab Road near Rock Island Road in North Lauderdale.
22 seconds. That's how long it took for an argument over a parking space to end a man's life outside a Walmart in Florida. He's on his knees, hands raised, phone camera rolling, and then one shot. He falls, and the whole thing was caught on camera. Before we go any further, I need you to hit that subscribe button and tap the bell right now, because this case is still unfolding, it's moving fast, new details are dropping every single day, and if you don't subscribe, you are going to miss it. This channel is called The Last Witness, and honestly, that name has never fit a case more than this one. Let's get into it. So here's what we know so far, and I want to walk you through this slowly because there's a lot of conflicting information floating around, and I think you deserve the full picture, not just a headline. It's Tuesday, June 30th, just before 12:30 in the afternoon, in North Lauderdale, Florida. A totally normal Walmart. The kind of place you run into on your lunch break for paper towels and forget about 5 minutes later. Except this particular Tuesday, that parking lot became a crime scene. Broward County deputies got a 911 call reporting shots fired. When they arrived, they found a 62-year-old man on the ground, suffering from a gunshot wound to the stomach. That man was Bart Diguglielmo. Now let's talk about who Bart actually was, because I think this is the part that gets lost the fastest in stories like this. Once someone becomes the victim in a headline, their whole life before that moment kind of disappears. So let's bring it back. Bart was originally from Hamilton, New Jersey. He served in the U.S. Army as a staff sergeant, and according to his family, he was deployed during Desert Storm. After his military service, he didn't slow down. He became a nurse, and he spent 30 years in that profession, a trauma nurse specifically, which, if you think about it, is almost unbearably ironic. A man who spent 3 decades of his life trying to save people who'd been shot, stabbed, and broken by violence ended up dying from a gunshot wound himself, in a parking lot, over something as small as where to park a car. Bart had moved down to Florida a few years back. His daughter Amanda has said publicly that he made that move specifically to be closer to her. He was a father of 3. His sister, who spoke to reporters but didn't want her full name used, described him as, in her words, a Christian man, a very good person, someone who would not hurt anyone. She said she was devastated. She also shared something that just adds another layer of heartbreak to this. Bart had an identical twin brother who passed away years earlier. So in a way, his family had already lived through losing half of a pair once before. And now this. If you go looking on Facebook, you'll find tribute posts already circulating, family and strangers alike sharing his photo, sharing condolences, people who never met him writing that this never should have happened over something as small as a parking space. That's the thing about cases like this. They hit people who have zero personal connection to Bart, because all of us, every single one of us, has been annoyed about a parking spot at some point in our lives. None of us have ever thought it could end like this. Okay, now let's slow down and actually walk through what happened, because the video, and there is video, more than one angle of it, tells a story that's honestly hard to watch, and even harder to fully explain. According to the Broward Sheriff's Office, Bart and an adult woman got into a verbal argument over a parking space. A witness told reporters that before things escalated, Bart had actually parked his white SUV in a way that blocked this woman from pulling into a spot. Then, a few minutes later, he moved it and let her in. So at that point, you'd think, okay, that's it. That's resolved, right? Wrong. The woman gets out of her car, and here's where it gets chilling. Witnesses say she's holding 2 things in her hands. In one hand, a cell phone. In the other, a handgun. She has a brief exchange with people inside Bart's SUV. And then, moments later, cell phone and dashcam footage show Bart walking toward her. She raises the gun and points it directly at him. For about the first 30 seconds, they're just talking, standing there. You can actually hear her on the video saying, "Walk away." Just those two words, "walk away." And for a moment, it looks like maybe he's going to listen. Video shows him starting to walk in the other direction. But then he turns back around. He follows her as she moves around a parked car, and she's still got that gun raised on him the entire time. And then, one shot. He doubles over. He goes down. And here's what really gets me about this. He doesn't die instantly. Footage shows Bart remaining conscious on the ground for several minutes, sitting up, lying back down, sitting up again, while the woman who shot him stays nearby, still on her phone call. Shoppers are walking by. Cars are still driving through the lot like it's a normal Tuesday afternoon, because most of them have no idea what just happened 10 feet away from them. Paramedics eventually arrive. They rush Bart to Broward Health Medical Center. And that's where, despite everything doctors could do, he was pronounced dead. Now here's a detail that I think really deserves your attention, because it flips something about this whole story on its head. The woman who fired that shot did not run. She did not flee the scene. She stayed right there. She cooperated fully with deputies when they arrived, and she told them straight up that she believed she acted in self-defense. Deputies actually handcuffed her at the scene, but as of the most recent updates, no charges have been filed against her. The entire case has now been handed over to the Broward County State Attorney's Office, and it's going to be up to them to decide whether what happened in that parking lot was a justified act of self-defense or a homicide. So think about that for a second. We have video, multiple angles of video, and even with all of that footage, this case is still sitting in that gray area where two completely different stories can both look true depending on how you frame it. And that brings us to the twist in this story, because just when you think you've got a clear picture of what kind of man Bart was, his own daughter steps forward and says the media is getting him wrong. Amanda, Bart's daughter, gave an emotional interview after the shooting, and what she said really complicates the narrative that had already started spreading online. She said she'd actually been estranged from her father for a long time. They weren't close for years, but they had recently been working on rebuilding that relationship. That's already heartbreaking on its own, right? A daughter and father finally finding their way back to each other, and then this happens. But here's the part that really stopped me. Amanda said she'd seen different news outlets reporting different versions of why this fight even started. One outlet said it was purely over the parking spot. Another outlet apparently suggested that Bart may have been making some kind of advance toward the woman before the shooting, and Amanda pushed back hard on that second version. She said, and I'm paraphrasing her closely here, that she wanted to completely debunk that claim, because that is not who her father was. She said he wasn't a perfect man, but he was not someone capable of that kind of behavior, especially not to that extreme. So now, we've got a family member directly contradicting part of the public narrative, in real time, while the investigation is still active. That's rare. That's a moment where you can feel the case being fought over, not just in a courtroom eventually, but in the public eye, right now, while people are still forming their opinions. And that's exactly why this case is so hard to sit with. Because on one hand, you have a woman who says she felt threatened enough to pull a gun and eventually fire it, who stayed at the scene, who cooperated, who never tried to run. On the other hand, you have a family burying a father, a brother, a veteran, a nurse who spent 30 years saving other people's lives, and they're being forced to defend his character on the news at the same time they're grieving him. Nobody in this story gets to just be sad. Everybody has to also be defensive, has to also be strategic, has to also think about how this is going to look once the state attorney's office makes its decision. I want to be really upfront with you about something. This case is not closed. It is not solved. There has been no arrest, no formal charges, nothing final. The Broward County State Attorney's Office still has to review everything. The video from multiple angles, the witness statements, the 911 call, whatever forensic evidence exists, before they decide whether this was self-defense or something else entirely. That process can take weeks. Sometimes it takes months. So I want you to understand, what I've told you today is where things stand right now, but this story is going to keep changing. And that's exactly why I need you to be subscribed and have that bell turned on. Because the moment there's an update, an arrest, a charging decision, a new piece of video, anything, We are covering it here, on The Last Witness, before most people even hear about it. So before you go, I want to leave you with a few questions, because I think this case forces us to actually sit with some uncomfortable stuff about ourselves, not just about Bart or the woman who shot him. Why does a parking spot, something so small, so temporary, something we forget about the second we walk into the store, have the power to escalate into someone's final moment on this earth? What is it about being in our cars, in parking lots, that makes so many of us feel like our territory is being violated the second someone else wants the same 6 feet of asphalt we want? And here's the harder question. If you were the woman in that parking lot, and a man you'd already had a heated argument with started walking towards you after you told him to stop, when, if ever, do you think pulling a gun becomes the right call? And on the other side, if you were Bart, having already de-escalated once by moving your car, what do you think made him turn around and walk back toward her instead of just leaving? There's no clean answer here. That's what makes this case sit with you long after you close this video. If this story affected you the way it affected me while I was researching it, do me a favor, hit that like button, drop a comment telling me what you think really happened in that parking lot, and make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. Because I promise you, The Last Witness is going to be right here the moment this case moves forward. Bart deserves to be remembered as more than a headline. Let's make sure he is.